Alright, hello everyone. I think we are live again here. And yeah, so looking forward to going through more of the Woodpecker method here today. We are 526 puzzles in, I believe. Let me double check that real quick. We finished up this chapter just yesterday. And yeah, so we had done 526 different puzzles in the course so far. We're going to pick back up again together on number 527, which means we are pretty close to halfway through. There are another, let's say, about 600 puzzles left. So yeah, I think we're just about halfway through the course. And let's just keep it going. So let's get right into it. Close that. And okay, black to play in our first one. Feels like I want to play knight f3 check. Maybe here I can take the pawn on c2, give the check. If king h1, then queen g3, threatening mate on h2, and I think the only way to stop the mate on h2 is to move the knight for the queen on c2 to defend, but if you move the knight, then there's queen to g1. So the alternative for white is to move the king to f2, but after king f2, there's queen g3, king e2, and then one of the knights go to the d4 square. So I think it's rook takes c2, check, check. I don't know if it matters which knight. Let's use this one, take the queen, and we win material. I think we take the pawn and then play bishop to a4, skewer the queen to the knight, and I think we at least win one pawn. Feels like rook takes f6, then queen h6, and then taking the pawn on h7 to pick up the queen on this one. Feels like knight takes g3, pawn takes, rook takes, king moves, and then pick up the knight. That's the idea I'm leaning towards. We are down a pawn right now. This would at least put us ahead of pawn. And I think, I don't know if we're winning that endgame or not, but it's better than being down a pawn. So I would assume knight takes g3, rook takes. Now it doesn't matter which way we capture here. I would think we use this rook to control the checks, but maybe it doesn't really matter so much. I'm going to use this one. Yeah, I think I want to guarantee that the alternative. Maybe king f5 and then take with the king instead? Okay, so black is going to be a bit better here. We're going to take the e5 pawn, keep c5 defended, and black's up a pawn in this endgame. Alright, good start. So on this one here, I think we might have bishop h3, queen takes, take the knight, pawn is pinned, rook moves, and then we can pick up the e5 or c7 pawns. I think if we get to take the knight on d6, then black's position collapses, so I think this is the idea. And then yeah, we can take either one of the pawns once the rook moves it, off of the e7 square. Okay, good start. Bishop h3 check. There's probably king to d5 or pawn to f5, I guess. Knight d6. There's also pawn f5 check. If the king takes, you check and take b7. That looks pretty good. Getting a past c pawn looks to be useful, but black does also get past e and f pawns, so maybe it's not the most helpful. c6 right away, though, actually, now that I'm looking at it more. c6 right away, I'm threatening knight c5 check, and I'm threatening to push the pawn to c7. I think c6, I think we can just take here. check, take the bishop, and yeah, so we are just winning a piece in this position. Alright, good to go. White's threatening checkmate, which is obviously a big deal. I think I can give up the rook, check on d1. If the queens get traded, then the pawn is no longer pinned, and I can take the bishop once the king moves. And I mean, the alternative, I can't play bishop f8 because I lose the queen on a4, so I think I have to go for this. King g3, I think I could have continued attacking, but here I think we're going to trade the queens, take the bishop, and we are up a piece. Alright. I might have seen this one before. I think we can take the pawn on h7. And if the knight takes back, we take the queen, the rook takes, we get the rook on c8, and we're up the exchange. If black tries to take on c1 first, we play knight takes f6 with check. I think we do it this way. And then, yeah, here we trade the queens, we take the rook, and we are winning material. It says that black fought on with king to g7 and made a draw, which is very surprising considering that white's up the exchange and up a pawn, so white must have messed this up pretty badly to not win this game. Okay. Knight takes f7, king g8, and this queen is still attacked. Might be queen takes f7. Because if rook takes, then we have checkmate. The knight covers the g8 square. And if black checks on a1, we move the king. We are attacking the queen on a1. And we're still attacking the rook on f8. The alternative is to take the bishop first, which might also not be bad. That might also work too, but I think queen takes is more dangerous. Have to move the king. We can take this with check first, then take the queen, and we're just up the exchange in this position. It says knight takes f7, king moves, check here, and white holds the balance. I guess we can't really, we can't take on d8 in the first place because then black would just, well, yeah, if we take on d8, black will check us on a1, king d2, then rook takes d8 with check back, and then I think we get into a very dangerous position there. So, all right, what to do on this one? Black is threatening rook takes, or white is threatening rook takes g5 and some checkmating attack there. You have to be a bit careful. We can go queen f5, and if the rook takes, we have back rank mates. And if the rook moves away, maybe just queen to g6 or queen takes f6, and I think we're in good shape there. We are already up one piece, so I think as long as we defend against the attack, I think we're in good shape. So I think it's this. And then, personally, I think I would just go back to g6 to try to trade pieces, I think. Yeah, and black is just up a piece. Black has a large material advantage, but is under attack, so yeah, we need to trade stuff. That's the key. Okay, black's move here. This is almost mate, but the bishop's covering it. So maybe I can actually take the pawn on b2, and then check on d2, and then white would have to block with the queen somewhere. I take the queen, and then I think, aside from taking the queen, we're also going to get the bishop that's on c2. So I think that this is very dangerous. Check. And yeah, we win the queen, we win the bishops, and black's completely winning here. Rook takes bishop, knight takes, check with the bishop. If the king goes back, knight g6 is mate, so the king moves up the board, we take the knight, we get two pieces for the rook, I think. I don't think you can take the knight first, because after bishop to d5 check, king f8, black controls the g6 square. I think that's the trick there, you could call it. Now I will actually, now that I'm saying that, there is rook takes g2 to throw in first. We take on e8, they take on g2, then they take back. And then there we're not actually ahead anything. We're not actually ahead there at all. So maybe it is rook takes f6 first. Rook takes, pawn takes, check, king f8. There is knight e6 check, and then no matter where the king goes, there will be some kind of knight to d4 discovered check. Hey there, Angel Perez. Good morning. Hope you're doing well. So I think it's rook takes f6, and then yeah, here we have rook takes e8. Yeah, I don't think rook takes e8 works on move 1 because of rook takes g2. I want to just double check that. Let's see. Yeah, rook takes e8. Yeah, it says rook takes g2. This is the defensive option that black has, and then it's an equal position here. So you have to take on f6 with check first. And then, yeah, here the important point is knight e6 check, and then no matter where the king goes, you have knight to d4 check hitting the rook, and then you can also win the bishop at the very end of all of this. That's probably the better, let's say, tactical sequence to go, or for, you know, that makes white work the hardest to win the material. Whereas if black just takes with the king, this is, in terms of the game, this is black's better option. But in terms of a tactical puzzle, the other sequence is the one that makes white work the hardest, in my opinion. So this is the way the game went, I'm sure, but taking with the pawn makes white work the hardest, even though it's objectively much worse. And yeah, it does show in the text why pawn takes did not really work. Okay, white's move here. Black's threatening to take on e3. We do have a far advanced pawn. Let's see. I kind of want to play h5 and open up the h-file, but I think it's a little bit too slow. I think black takes with check, and that gets kind of annoying, I would say. Pushing this pawn is an option, but I'm not sure how we make that work. I could take on d4 and then push the pawn, but black is covering c8, so I don't feel like taking the pawn is the way to go, especially because the knight on d4 is very annoying. So what do we do here? I feel like if we get rid of the knight, we can push the pawn. I think that's kind of like the general goal, you could call it. But taking on d4 and knight takes back allows black some attacking chances, which is on the more annoying side of things. What is this one? Rook to b1, and then some kind of attack on the back rank is possible. Oh, sorry, rook to b1, I just lose the rook. Okay, we can't do that. I have a feeling it's pawn to e4, but I'm trying to work out what I would do as a follow-up. I think I would maybe trade and then try to get rid of the knight somehow, which is, again, easier said than done. What do we do here? I'm not even really entirely sure what move I would play in a game. Like, I don't like this. I think this is an idea, but I just don't really see the follow-up. There's no checks right now. There's no big threatening moves that beat out a capture of a check. Or a capture that is also a check. Like, I could play knight d7 to hit the rook, but then he might just take on e3 with the rook or the pawn, which doesn't seem to lead to a whole lot for me. H5, take, king moves, check. Like, I don't think that's so great. Could go rook c1, and then if they take, move the king away, but then I think they just block the pawn. Yeah, I'm not sure on this one. I'm not sure. Maybe e4, trade everything, and then rook b1, and then but then he plays knight c7 and rook e7 and blocks it all. So that doesn't feel like the right move either. I don't even really have a whole lot of a great move idea here, which is quite annoying. What do we do here? I'm really not sure. Maybe it's like take bishop d3, but then black is able to take c6, and then it's just probably an equal position. There is some kind of like e4, bishop takes, rook e1 type of pin, but the bishop on e2 is in the way, which is annoying. Okay, I'm guessing a bit on this one. I'm really not actually sure on this particular one. I'm gonna try e4. It is e4, but I wasn't I wasn't really so sure about the follow-up here. Maybe rook c1 or something? The rook and the pawn are both hit. So rook c1, but black I think just blocks. And again, I don't see a special follow-up. If I take the bishop, they take, and again, nothing's really jumping out at me. Okay, I'm going to try this. Okay, apparently this wins somehow. e4, take. It says, by forcing black's rook to an unpleasant square while keeping the king away from checks, white has made the c-pawn a winner. Rook b1, here, check, and bishop c4. I thought black would block on c7, but I guess we can play rook b7 and take the a-pawn. Yeah, maybe it's just, it's not as much of a tactic, it's more of a like transition the position into something that's good for white. Okay, a little bit of an odd puzzle for a tactical exercise, but I guess we got it correct somehow. I think here we take on g3 and then check on c3 and then take the rook. I think we're in good shape there. And then we'll take f4 after rook e2. What to do on this one? Queen e3, rook takes, check, and then checkmate. And if you don't take the queen, then queen f2's a big problem. Queen e3, bishop d4, you take that bishop, and then queen f2. Okay, he can run. But at the very, very least, we can check and pick up a pawn, if nothing else. Maybe we trade rooks first. I think we check first, though. Maybe check here. Check on g1. Okay, I guess checking on g1 is better. I would imagine we trade the rooks, but maybe we can also just take the pawn. I think we trade the rooks, though, and then take the pawn. And then I guess we take another pawn? Okay. We're just picking up a ton of pawns here. I'm not really sure why queen f2 didn't work. It feels like it would be pretty much the same idea, but okay, anyways. Bishop f8, and then no matter what takes on f8, queen h8 is mate, I believe. Okay, I should have seen bishop g8. I think we have rook h7. Yeah, and then wherever the queen moves, we have queen g7, checkmate. Okay. Let's see here. Knight f7 check, rook takes. But then what next? But then rook to g5, and then rook takes h5 is checkmate no matter what, I think. Yeah, there's no way to stop rook takes h5 mate. Okay, what to do on this one? Feels like it's got to be knight takes g3, queen takes g3, king g1, queen at h2, rook f1, rook f8, take the queen. I mean, or actually bishop g3 would be mate there, right? Yeah, okay, that's for sure the move. I guess it's not mate, but the attack is way too strong. The king is getting flushed out into the center, and black's in good shape. Okay. Knight takes h3, pawn takes, rook takes, and then g4 knight is difficult to defend. We also have pawn to h5 if we need to attack it another time. You can take with the rook first, maybe. But I don't really think you need to sacrifice. I think you take with the knight. And then yeah, you're gonna win the knight on g4 pretty soon. Okay, good. So I would love to take the queen, of course, but my own bishop is pinned. So I think I can throw in rook h8. You kind of attack the undefended rook, try to pull it away from making the pin, then you can take the queen. And if black takes our queen, we take their rook with check, and then we take the queen and we're up a rook. And I think it's difficult for black to save the queen and guard the rook here. Okay, we are up a rook. Feels like something like this. But you could also take on c6 first, I guess, or take b6 first somehow. If I do it this way, knight blocks, check, king moves, take b6. Feels like it's too hard to defend against both threats. If bishop f6, we check on e6 and take the knight on d7. If the knight goes to f6, we check on e6 and take on b6. If knight f8, we checkmate. I don't think black can defend against all the threats. Because we also get... Oh, here we can take the... Oh, sorry, we can't take the bishop, but we can take the b6 pawn. And I think black is losing too many pawns here at this point. Hey again, Ernesto. Too early for tactics? Starting the day off right, you could say. Alright, what's the sequence here? I think I take the pawn, rook takes, take on c8, and then there's these ideas. Okay, good to go. I don't think I want to just trade right away. Check on f1 first, king to g3 to keep the pawn protected. And then I don't see a great follow-up there. There is queen to d1 check first. King g3, h4 check, king takes, check again, pawn blocks. I don't see the follow-up there. Feels like we need to pull the king into some kind of fork or something like that. So maybe it's check, king g3, h4, king takes, take g2. I don't know if that's winning, but it at least looks pretty scary for the king. No question about that, but I don't know if that's winning. could start with h4 with the idea of queen g3 check if they take our bishop, but h4, they check us, king moves, probably then they take our bishop, and I don't think we really gain a whole lot there. I have a feeling it's queen f1 check first, but I'm not super convinced by the follow-up. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I guess this is the way to go. I assume we're taking the g2 pawn. I'm kind of curious as to why he doesn't take on h4. Oh, there's queen f4. That's what I was missing. Queen takes f4 is a lot more dangerous. And yeah, now we... Okay. So I had the idea of kind of pulling the king out into the open, which does win, but little bit of the wrong calculation there. But okay, we got the answer correct, technically. I think it's knight e6, bishop moves, and then bishop d8 for the pin. Not the right move. Okay, there's a better move. Maybe h6, bishop h4, then pin? That might also work. Okay. It says knight e6 also works and gets full points. Alright. Bishop takes, king takes, maybe d5, opening up queen to d4 check, forking the king and the bishop. And then it's hard for black to save both the bishop and the c6 pawn. Oh, I guess we just take the pawn, right? Okay, good. Bishop takes, queen takes, we get the rook on f4. The problem is if bishop takes, there's rook g4, but I guess then we get the knight on f6. And then we're up at least one pawn, right? So is there anything better? Could take f6 first and then g2, I suppose. But if we take f6, maybe they... No, they would not want to do that. So it's either taking f6 and then g2 or taking g2 right away. And I have a feeling it's taking g2 right away, but it could also not be. If I take g2, maybe there's knight g4, which I could also imagine is... But then we have bishop takes h3 and the knight's pinned. Okay, I'm going to take g2 first. It's probably taking f6 and then g2. Okay, so it's taking f6, then g2. I think I go to g4 to hit this rook. And yeah, we're up material. It says bishop takes g2 does not work immediately because white has h4. And we lose a piece. Okay, I missed the h4 defense. So we need to take f6 and then g2, and then now we have the g4 square open. I missed this h4 idea from white. Okay, feels like we take f7 to get rid of the defense of e6. And then is there some follow-up at that point? I don't think it's take h7. At worst case scenario, black plays king h8, and the king is not really being attacked anymore. So I'm pretty sure it's take f7. The king has to recapture since the rook is hit, and then the question is what next? What next? They're threatening to take our knight. We don't really have any more checks once the king is on f7. Knight takes e6 and knight takes c6. There's also bishop takes d5. Oh, so that's what it is. So take this, take here, take d5, and then pile up on the pinned rook. Okay. As soon as I saw the bishop takes d5 option, then I put the pieces of the puzzle together. Okay, queen is hit, rook is hit. How do we save both? I mean, if we move the queen, they take the rook, we take back, they get the bishop, and then we're equal on pieces. Hey, how's it going, Itachi? Nice to see you again. We can move the queen, lose the rook, but then play bishop f6, which hits the rook as well as the knight. But then white plays rook c1 to protect both. So I don't know if that works the way we want it to. Get rid of those arrows. So we're going to lose the exchange at the very least, but we need to keep at least the bishop. We need to keep a material advantage somehow here. So bishop c5 counterattacks the queen, but then there's queen g5 check and they take the queen. I guess there's... Yeah, no, that wouldn't work. So it's not bishop c5. I don't think it's bishop f6. I mean, losing your queen is very bad. Rook e6, he takes the queen, I take the queen, they take back with the f-pawn, and I'm not ahead of rook or anything. I'm not ahead of any material. So I think it has to be a queen move. It's not a check on the back rank. White just takes both of those. So I think it has to be a queen move. But the question is where to move the queen and what's the follow-up afterwards. Where to move the queen and what's the follow-up afterwards. I have a feeling it's move the queen, they take the rook, and then you play bishop f6 before you take the knight. The problem is, whenever we play bishop f6, they can always play rook to c1 to guard the knight, which is kind of making life a bit difficult here. So it's not knight to d5, I don't think. Or sorry, it's not queen to d5, because after knight takes, even if we move the bishop and make a threat, there's knight e7 check to force a trade. There's no way to move the queen and hit the rook on a1. I mean, there's queen d4, but we lose the queen, which is obviously bad. There's no other checks. There's no way to threaten checkmate, really. So what do we do here? What are we doing? There is f4, I guess, so we could consider f4. Ah, maybe that's the idea. Maybe. Hold on. Let's see. f4. If the pawn takes, we have rook to g6 check, and if he takes the rook, we take back. We're still up the bishop. That seems reasonable. If the queen takes, then what? If the queen takes, then what? There's also queen e4 right at the start. Thomas's f4? It could be. It's definitely an idea to consider for sure. So, okay, queen takes, what do we do there? Queen is still hit, rook is hit. But then, now the queen is no longer aiming at the bishop. So if I move the queen and then take back, my bishop is not hit. That's an important point. So I think the queen has to go to e4. However, when the queen goes to e4, then I can play rook e6 and the queen is no longer defended, and then I am able to keep the piece. I think it is Thomas's f4. If white takes the queen, we get theirs, they get ours. We're up a rook at the start, so we would still be up a bishop in that position at the end. So I think it is Thomas's f4. That's hilarious. And then I think my idea was just to move the queen. I think you can move the queen pretty much anywhere as long as you keep the rook defended. So I would probably just go queen e6. Okay. Queen d5 should work too. Okay. Queen c7. All right, and then you're having the extra piece. Yeah, but the point is, after, let's say, f4, he gets our queen, we get his, he gets our rook, we take back, we are still ahead the bishop at the end of all of that. It is Thomas's f4. That's pretty funny. And then yeah, we're able to maintain a material advantage, which is nice. That's pretty funny. Okay. Feels like rook d7, queen takes, check here, king moves, but then what next? I think we can flip the moves around. We can take the pawn and then check and then take the queen. I think we do it this way. And yeah, we're just up a pawn. And the king is exposed. Alright, if this wasn't here, knight g6 would be pretty good. So maybe we just take the pawn. Because if bishop takes, knight check, and then we take f8. If rook takes, we check, king here. That's a little trickier, I guess. We still have rook takes f8, queen takes f8, take h7, then f8. Then we're not ahead material, right? We've given up 2 pieces for a rook. Then queen h6. Hold on. Take, check there. Maybe. I have a feeling it's bishop takes and knight check. And then I think I play rook takes f8. I believe that's the move. Queen d7, there's this block. So I'm pretty sure it's this. No, it's not that. Interesting. Is this some kind of queen g4 and there's just a lot of dangerous threats? Maybe. The king can't really escape all the discovered checks. That could be very dangerous. I think if we check, the rook blocks, and I don't see... I mean, I guess you can trade and take e5. It feels like there's probably lots of moves that are pretty good. Yeah, queen d7. There is king takes g6, I guess. But then queen back to g4 is checkmate. Okay, so he can't take the knight. He can block with the rook, and we trade and take e5, and that looks very strong. Maybe that's the way to go. I think we trade, take e5. Yeah, okay. And that gets a very good position. It does say here that queen g4 also wins, but it says rook takes f8 and rook takes a8 as less clear, even though it should be winning eventually. Okay, so it's a position where there's a kind of a variety of ways to win, but they wanted us to be the most precise. We've seen plenty of puzzles in that vein. Oh, it actually ends up that queen g4 is even better. Queen g4 is even better than queen d7, according to the computer. How good is rook takes f8? Okay, rook takes f8 is not as convincing. I would understand that. But yeah, queen to g4 is also quite good. Black is just kind of, their king is kind of just stuck on the g7 square. Okay. Queen g4 is what you thought? Yeah, it's multiple moves are ending up being good there, it looked like. Okay, I feel like there should be some rook takes f8 type of idea, but after the check, the king moves, check, moves, take f6, maybe? Does that work? I'm always a little concerned about this pawn pushing, though, so hold on. Are the answers computer checked or just the moves played in the game? I think I would assume that the full course is computer checked is my assumption. I mean, I have There has been puzzles where there's been multiple answers, but I don't think we've come across a puzzle that the answer was like flat out wrong or something like that. So there's been some puzzles with multiple answers, but no just flat out wrong answers here. Okay, can I do one without moving the pieces at all? I've done a bunch like that. That previous one, that is correct that I did kind of move the pieces. Okay, so on this one, I think it's rook takes f8, king takes f8. I think queen to c5 check, king g8. Then we have queen to c8 check, king h7, and then queen f5 check forks the king and the rook on d3. I think we need to get the queen to the f5 square eventually. So rook f8, king takes, queen c5 check. If king to e8, probably we have checkmate with queen c8, king e7, bishop c5 is almost mate. I guess rook can block, check on c7, take on d6. That should be game over pretty quick. And so I think rook takes f8, queen c5, and then you're checking on c8 or f5, or c8, f5, c6. Like there's no protection for the king with all of the, black's queen and a rook are pretty far away. So rook f8, king f8, queen c5, king moves, then queen to c8, and then more and more checks, and black is going to lose the rook or get mated is the way I'm understanding this one. Good to move the pieces now? So it's this, 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 this. Okay. I think it's bishop takes h3 and then bishop takes d4 followed by knight f3 check. Yeah, so that's the one. That was the one there. Yeah, I think bishop takes h3, pawn takes h3, bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4, knight f3 check, take on d4, we're up a pawn, and the king is exposed. I don't think you want to take on d4 first, because if you take d4 then h3, white plays bishop takes e5. That was my first one. Alright, bishop takes h3, and white resigned prematurely. But the point is, if they take h3, we are up a pawn. And that's the way the game went. Okay. Knight takes b7, king takes b7, rook c7 check, rook takes e7, black is down a pawn, and white is smooth sailing there. This one looks pretty straightforward. We can take either one of the rooks in this case. I don't think it matters which rook. Then, all right, fair enough. Didn't consider this full sequence. Didn't move the piece. I moved the pieces when I thought I had the answer, but I did not consider the full sequence. I didn't consider bishop takes b3. So knight f7, rook f8. Pawn takes b3, rook takes f7. I think we pick up the d pawn, but maybe it's not the most convincing. I don't think we take on b3 right away. I feel like we play knight f7. Feels like knight f7. I mean, I don't really know what else you play, quite honestly, on this one. Then you take b3. And then you... I don't know if it's rook c5 or rook d1. Both of them are going to pick up the d pawn. Rook c5, I guess there's d4, but I mean, the pawn is a goner pretty soon anyways. I guess I would just go rook to d1. Okay. Either one works. It says rook d1 is also good enough. So yeah, knight takes b7. It didn't matter if the bishop took on the rook because we can take one of the two rooks on the d file. But I did miss the bishop takes b3 move. I will say that I missed that one. Okay. Feels like rook takes e7 and then queen takes f6. And then if black moves the rook, we check on h8 or g7. If black protects the rook, then we still check on h8, then g7, and take h7. I don't think this one requires much more calculation. This one is pretty clear-cut. Bishop takes e7 followed by knight takes c6 at least wins the pawn, but it feels a little bit iffy for some reason. Knight takes f7 followed by bishop takes e6 looks even better, I think, because the rook on e1 will be attacking the knight that's on e7, knight g5 ideas, and yeah, I don't think I would need to go too much further with this one. I mean, if the queen moves away, you still take on e6, so yeah, black is unable to deal with knight g5 and knight to e5. And king takes f7 is met with, you know, check, and then knight takes e6. I think bishop takes e6, and then, you know, some kind of bishop takes e7. I think that also wins for sure. Okay, rook takes f6, pawn takes rook takes f6, pawn takes f6. And then queen takes h7, queen h8, the king runs a little bit. But not very much, right? Rook takes f6, pawn takes f6, queen h7, king f8. I think you throw in the move rook e1. Cut off the king's escape. You're threatening queen h8 mate. The only way to stop that is to block the e file. You have to play bishop e2, but then I can take on f7, or bishop e6, but then I still play rook takes e6, and black is still getting mated. There's a check on the back rank, but after king g2, there's no more checks. Yeah. Okay. I was assuming rook takes e6. Yeah, that's the answer. Okay. G4 check is actually my first instinct. If king takes g4, we take the bishop with check and we win a piece. If the king takes the rook, it looks like we should have a checkmate. Knight f2 check, king takes f4. Bishop d2, king g3, rook g1, king h2. Rook h1, king g2, maybe no mate. But if g4, king takes, knight f2, king takes e4, if we start with rook g1, then we're threatening bishop to d2 mate, as well as knight h3. And if e4, knight h3. Yeah, so I think it's g4, king takes rook, knight f2, king takes pawn, and then rook to g1 to set the set the mating net kind of thing. And then I don't think bishop to d2 checkmate can be stopped without playing e4, and then in which case knight h3 is mate. This is almost like an in-game study. And that's that. Because he had to play e4 so that if bishop d2, king e5, but as soon as he plays e4, there's no e4 square for the king, and then it's knight h3. Yeah, if you try to check with the bishop, the king oddly enough kind of escapes. Yeah, somehow black is not getting mated here. But you wanna set the mating net with this rook g1 move. Okay, happy about that. This one I think is pretty straightforward. Rook c8 check, king h7, rook h8 check, king takes, check g6, take the queen, and you're up like 2 pawns. Okay. Knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, queen to d5, and then there's no way to guard the bishop on e5. And then you're picking up at least a pawn. Okay, maybe queen h5 is better, but I'm pretty positive that queen d5 wins as well. It says, but instead, queen d5, rook d8, take, and it says this is not so much better for white. I guess you're not up a pawn. I mean, I would think that white's better. Better pawn structure, pieces are active, double the rooks, rook c5, rook e7. I'm actually quite surprised that this is not, like, an advantage for white. Yeah, not much. Huh, interesting. Whereas the queen h5 version is better. Okay, fair enough. I don't know if I'd really say this is a miscalculation. Maybe it's like more of a misevaluation. I thought that the position after queen d5 was better than it is. But I can understand queen h5 being an improved version. Okay, fair enough. I would like to hope that during a game I would recognize queen h5 as an option, but, you know, maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. We're being threatened by pretty much checkmate, so we have to be pretty quick with whatever we do. Knight e7, that is covered. Feels like it should be some kind of rook takes g7, king takes, queen c7 check. I guess king h8 and we run out of checks. That's not fantastic. There is knight to e3 as a defensive option, which doesn't feel super, let's say, fear-inspiring, but it is available. There is knight f6 check, but then the king goes to h8, and I don't really see the follow-up checks or anything. Oh, sorry, knight f6, king h8, we have rook to d8. Okay, I mean, that would be mate, so hold on. Knight f6, king has to go to f7, I guess. Queen to c7 check. If king takes knight, queen takes g7, that should be mate around the corner pretty quickly, I would imagine. Just feels like there's too many pieces that are in the attack. Yeah, I'm thinking knight f6 on this one. I don't think it's rook takes g7, because black kind of... We don't get the knight out of the way, which means we don't really get the rook on d1 in the game. King e6 after queen c7 check. I think there's queen to d6 or d7, and it feels like there should be a mate. Knight f6, king f8. There's rook d8, I believe. Or queen c5 check, and then back to c7. So... I think in a game I check on f6, check on c7, and then kind of just let black figure it out. I think queen c7 was my idea. I saw that I had rook takes g7, queen takes e7 here, so that... I didn't think black was going to play rook e7. I thought this was pretty straightforward. It says king takes f6, black is mated after rook to d6. I would have thought queen takes g7. Yeah, this is the path I would have gone, probably. Hey, India. Nice to see you today. But apparently rook to d6 check, and then queen g7, queen g6, queen e6 also works. I think there's a lot of wins. I think the important point is recognizing that knight f6 check is the move and not rook takes g7, because black kind of just runs out of checks. Or white runs out of checks is the problem. There is a perpetual check, but yeah, okay, we solved that one correctly. I feel like I might have seen this one before. I think it's one of the pieces going to the f6 square to stop black from playing f5. I don't remember which piece it is, though. 1 point for Gryffindor. I don't remember which piece is on f6. Knight takes h6. I think pawn takes... If you try to use the rook to check, the queen does protect the h6 pawn. It gets a little bit trickier to attack there, in my opinion. So it might be knight f6 instead. Pawn takes, pawn takes. It could be bishop takes h7 first. Maybe that is an option. I think knight f6, though. Pawn takes, pawn takes. If the knight takes the pawn, the rook takes. The king is just exposed. We're happy there. So the rook probably moves away to, you know, I don't know, d7 or c7 or something. Then we have rook g4 check. King moves, take the knight, and then check on g7, and then I think black is done for there. So I think it's knight f6. Okay, if he takes with the knight, I think that's just game over practically. I think we... do we take with the rook, or do we have some kind of check first? I think we take with the rook, trying to take on h6. Queen g7. Now, I don't think we take here and let them play f5. I think we go rook f1 first here. It says alternative. Maybe it is rook takes h6. I don't really like the look of letting black play f5, but I mean, I guess this is the way to go. It says rook a f1 can be played first as well. And it says after g takes f6, white can transpose or use one of the extra options. It says rook g4 check and bishop takes h7 are both winning. Is pawn takes f6 not winning? Oh, it says white can transpose. So that means if pawn takes f6, the knight would take f6 and would get the same position. Okay. So yeah, it's one of these moves to put the piece on f6. It does say rook f6 is also interesting. And it also says that queen h4, even queen h4, has a good position. It's a position where there's lots of good moves from the start, is the way it pans out on this one. Okay, keep going. Knight g3. I'll try to do it without arrows. Knight f6. It's the most forcing. Yeah, that's the way it ended up working out on that one. So knight g3 check. Pawn can't take, it's pinned. Hold on. Knight g3 check. If the knight takes on g3 or the bishop takes on g3, we actually take back on g3, which allows us to lose our queen, but then rook takes h2 as mate. And there's no way for white to save mate and save the queen at the same time. Knight g3, if the rook takes on g3, I think that's the most tenacious. But we can play rook takes h2 check. If the king takes, pawn takes g3 as check, and then we take the queen on d2. If the king goes to g1, then we have maybe queen h4 or something like that. And then we're threatening rook h1 followed by queen h2. We might even have rook takes f2. Actually, maybe rook takes f2 is even simpler. Yeah, so knight g3 check, rook takes g3, rook takes h2, king g1, maybe rook takes f2, and then I think we're winning material. There might also be queen h4, but I know that this is the start. And of course I miss an option from the opponent. I didn't even think about white not taking. That's my fault. It feels like queen h4 though, because we're threatening queen h3 mate, and queen takes h2. If bishop takes g3, pawn takes g3, pawn takes g3, queen h2, king f1. Maybe it's not so straightforward there. I think it's queen h4, but it's not so straightforward. I think it's queen h4, pawn takes, and then my assumption was queen h2, king f1, and maybe like rook f6 or something. And I think even though we've lost a pawn, white's king is pretty exposed, and it's pretty hard for them to defend. We have bishop takes g4 and rook takes f3 here. Interesting. So this is apparently the only sequence of moves that wins for black. Let me check that. Good luck, y'all. I'm too lazy this morning. So yeah, knight g3, rook takes, then rook h2, king g1. It says queen h4 wins. I thought rook takes here also won. Technically it does, but queen h4 is even better. Okay, so I was good on the calculation there for the most part. And it does say, the computer says white's better. Hold on a second. Here, here, here. But now it says black is better. Okay, the computer is confused. Here, here, take, check here. Rook f6. I think the computer's confused, because queen takes g3 just loses the queen. Yeah, now it says black is winning. Okay, I think the computer's also a bit sleepy this morning. Queen e3, bishop takes g4, and this is good for black for sure. Okay. This one's hard to see, to be honest. Yeah, a bit of a tricky one for sure, no question. Okay, knight takes pawn, pawn takes back, bishop f7 check, and rook takes queen. I think this one's pretty straightforward. There's some that, like, again, it's very interesting in these chapters. It's like some of them I'm getting, like, instantly, and then other ones are quite a bit trickier. And I don't know if that's because my pattern recognition on the tougher ones is off, or if they just are tougher ones. Feels a little bit like some of the puzzles are mislabeled in some regards. But anyways, let's go next. Our rook is hit, right? So c6, pawn takes c6, queen b6, and how do you guard both bishops at the same time? Can't guard both bishops. White should move the bishop backwards instead, but then black has defended against the threat, essentially, and black is in better shape. Okay. Bishop g2, king takes g2, rook f2, king takes f2, take on h2 with check, then take on c2, and we're up a queen for a rook. And then we take on c2. Okay. Okay, our queen is hit, our knight's hit. We can't take on f7. I think it's rook e1. Rook e1, if they take the knight, we take f7 because the f1 rook is pinned. If they take our queen, we take on f1 with check, queen takes back, rook takes e7, and there's nothing white can really do to stop rook e1 from checkmating or pinning on the back rank. If they take on e1, we take on e1 with check. We're maintaining our extra piece, so I'm pretty positive it's this. I did not think about queen to d5, but I think you can even just play king h8. I think you can even just play king h8 and avoid the checks. Not the answer. Interesting. Queen e6, I guess? No, not queen e6. Actually, yeah, maybe queen e6. No, they have rook f8. Rook f8 check takes, we lose the... No, then our rook is protecting. I think it's queen e6 then. Says alternative. Okay. It's a bit annoying. If we take on f1, they take back with check, and then they take our knight, which is not great. So what are we doing? King h8 and rook takes, and then queen e6. Those both look like answers. I'm not sure why they're not. Why are you making me find multiple answers? Queen takes f7, there's queen takes f7 check, and we can't take the queen because we would be, you know, pinned up there. Maybe that works, though. Maybe it is queen takes f7, actually, because after they give check and we move, there's nothing they can really do to stop rook f1 and and then rook e1 again. Queen takes f7 feels so unnecessarily fancy, but I think it works, actually. And then, yeah, you still take here and you still make the pin. Okay. Queen takes f7 is actually winning. It feels so unnecessarily fancy, though. It says queen e6 also and king h8 also win. You know. Okay. Can I understand that queen takes f7 is winning for sure as well? Yes. But again, always a bit annoying when you have multiple answers. Is queen takes f7 better, is my question? It's not even necessarily better, but it does win. Queen e6 wins, king h8 wins, queen takes f7 wins. Yeah, very weird position, but nice tactics to calculate. Oh, this is interesting. I literally just showed this game to a student of mine just yesterday. That's a coincidence. So this is knight takes f2, check, bishop d4, and then queen takes h3. And then if pawn takes queen, bishop takes. Yeah, that's funny. I actually just showed this game to a student just yesterday. So this is not me knowing the answer off, from calculating it. This is me literally having just looked at this puzzle, looked at this position yesterday. That's a coincidence. All right. Knight takes f2, or knight takes e2, rook takes. I take on c1 with check. Rook blocks, and then I take on c3. They take my queen. I play bishop d4, and I'm up the exchange. Queen takes h3. What a move! I actually had a game myself at one point. I think it was in the U.S. Open, like 10 years ago. I think it was exactly 10 years ago, right? 2014. I had a game in the U.S. Open against a lower rated player where I did that exact same type of tactic. I did like queen takes a6, and it was this like Bode's mate crisscross checkmate idea. I was pretty proud of that one. That was a pretty cool one. So yeah, I think this is for sure knight takes e2, and then either take the queen or take g3. I don't think this one requires a ton of calculation. The important point here to see is that it looks like our queen and bishop are both hit, and it doesn't look like there's a great way to solve both problems, but we can actually take on c3 and come back and make the pin. And we will stay ahead the exchange here. Okay. Knight e4, pawn takes e4, bishop takes f7, knight takes f7, queen takes f7. King d8, check on d8 or take f8 first. You would have been proud too. Yeah. It was a nice moment, one to put in the scrapbooks. Kind of tactic. I think this is knight e4, but then I'm having a little bit of trouble figuring out the specific follow-up. But it's kind of a position where it feels like there should be lots of ways for the attack to continue. Knight e4, if they don't take the knight, then knight f6 check or knight d6 check or killer. So we take f7, knight takes, queen takes, king d8. We either check with one of the rooks on d1, or we take f8 first, or even bishop g5 might work first, or even just bishop g7 and trap the rook in the corner. Yeah, there's so many good moves here, and it actually just stops after knight e4. It says rook a d1 first, but it also says bishop takes f7 is also winning. Yeah, lots of moves are good. There's not really a great way for black for black to keep their position held together here. All right, feels like knight takes f7, king takes f7, queen e6 check, king f8, rook f3, bishop blocks, bishop takes f6, pawn takes, or no, I guess it's got to be knight takes f7. I'm pretty positive about that. If they don't take the knight, then we just trade stuff and we're ahead material. If they do take queen f3 or queen e6, king f8, check, bishop blocks, take is annoying. Maybe we take on, or, hold on. Yeah, it's definitely knight takes f7, queen here, rook f3, not rook f3. So it must be bishop takes e7 first, or bishop takes d5 first. It must be bishop takes e7, rook takes e7, then rook f3 check, king e8. Hold on. It's got to be rook, bishop takes e7 then. I don't think it's bishop takes d5 because after bishop takes they cover the f3 square, which is annoying. So it's got to be this first. Says a better move is available, so okay. Is it bishop takes d5? Hey, Asanga. I'll answer your question. Give me just 1 second. I want to just finish this one here. Okay, it said bishop takes e7 is an alternative. The only other moves are like queen f5 and bishop takes here. You could try some kind of other rook lift, but bishop takes, take. I think black is ahead a piece there because we don't have rook f3. What's the other move then? What's the other move? I mean, this is the only... Okay, I didn't think that was the answer. Is it rook e5 and then some rook f5 move? I mean, is it this? It's not... sorry, I already tried that. It's not rook f3. What is it then? They're taking d5 right now. There's really not, but the point was maybe to get rid of a defender of the bishop, but I didn't have a feeling that was the move anyways. And maybe it's queen f5 first? If you go to g8, then you can trade a bunch of stuff and win the knight, so I can understand that. But if the bishop or knight blocks, then what are we doing? I didn't see an answer after either one of those. It's not queen f5. I'm kind of just... Oh, this is a famous one. Okay. I wasn't actually familiar with this one. And for whatever reason, I'm struggling with the follow-up. Rook f3 check. I think I already tried that one, and it said that wasn't the best move. Is it like bishop h6 or something? I'm not sure. I did try rook f3, right? I'm pretty sure this is not the answer. I'm going to be annoyed if I play rook f3 and it is the answer. Because I'm pretty sure I tried that one already. What are we doing here? Okay, is it... I don't think it's rook e5. Because bishop takes, check, bishop blocks. I mean, that doesn't really do anything. What am I missing here? I'm spitballing here a little bit. Bishop c1. Wow. Quite honestly, I would not have... I don't think I would have played bishop c1 like ever in this position. Is that the only winning move? That's crazy if that's the only winning move. What does it say here? It says rook f3 is a mistake. I did see this variation. I saw if pawn takes bishop h6, but I did see this queen takes f6 defense. It says bishop f4 gives white a winning advantage, as does bishop takes e7. But to get full points for the last one, you have to see this sequence. Okay. Bishop c1 lol. Yeah, that's a tough one. Hold on. I do want to see, is that the only winning move? Okay, I'll answer your question, Asanga. How do I develop my white repertoire further? I own your Ready Nimzo Larson course. I'm beginning to look very predictable and opponents are well prepared against me. So if you're already playing the Ready Nimzo Lursen, you could start learning like the normal ready with like maybe knight f3 and then c4 on move number 2. Or you could go knight f3 and then g3 on move number 2. Especially if you go knight f3 then g3, there will be some crossover, you know, depending on what variations you're looking at. Yeah, if you're wanting to kind of widen your repertoire without learning a whole new, like, you know, unless you're wanting to learn like e4 all of a sudden, or d4 on move 1 all of a sudden, you can kind of widen your repertoire a little bit more slowly by looking at like knight f3 then g3, or knight f3 then c4, or knight f3 then e3. You can kind of add a little bit of different wrinkles. There are other courses on this on Chessable or other places where those openings are covered. On Chessable specifically, I really like Camille Plichta's ready. Or sorry, he called it's his King's Indian attack. His King's Indian attack course I like quite a lot. Can the ready transpose to a Catalan? Yeah, absolutely. Like knight f3, e6. If you go g3, for instance, d5, bishop g2, you play d4, c4, and then it's a Catalan. So the ready can definitely transpose to a Catalan. Yeah, it says bishop c1 is the best move. Bishop takes e7, rook takes check here. Queen f7 only move. Okay, I think I was looking at queen g8, which is not the best move, but queen f7, take here, knight takes, and I guess you check and go here. Okay, so yeah, this one's tough. This is a tough tactic, and Gregor said this was a famous one. I think I've seen the date and the names, but I had not actually seen the tactic itself. Knight takes f7 and queen takes e6 is pretty straightforward, but bishop c1 is really, really tough. The idea of bishop c1 is you want to, at least according to the description, you want to play rook f3 check and then bishop a3. Rook f3, bishop blocks, bishop a3 check, and then that's the purpose of getting the bishop to the c1 square, is to get around to the a3 square. Oh yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, Asaga. That's a tough one though. Yeah, for sure, no question. That's a tough one. Okay, rook b7 check, queen d7 check, king moves. I don't know if I promote right away or if I take c6 first. I probably promote, I guess. I'm pretty sure this is the way to do things. And then yeah, do I take first or promote? If I promote, yeah, I think it's promote. I think I'm gonna win the knight eventually is the idea. Promote here and then go right back and then I take the knight. Okay. And yeah, white is completely winning here. Okay. Next one. Knight f6, going after the pinned piece. Because even if white takes on f6 with check, we take back, we win the g2 pawn, which looks very good. But after knight f6, there is bishop c2, which is slightly annoying. Okay, what are we doing here? There is also a weird move like g6 available. g6, if they take it, then we play like f5. It's a very weird looking move, but it's maybe an idea. g6 takes f5, and then the knight on e4 is attacked and pinned. Doesn't look like all that bad of an idea, honestly. Kind of looks good, I will say. Knight f6, bishop c2 is the annoying point. I think it's g6, and then f5. Yeah, okay. And yeah, I guess white could play g4, but I just kind of figured this was super risky for white. I guess I didn't really calculate it out much further, but it's still very risky for white here. Okay, got it correct. I feel like I've seen this one. I feel like there's some kind of queen trap or something. Maybe not though. Maybe it's just bishop takes f7, queen b3 check, and knight g5. I think black is kind of done for there. Unless I'm messing the move order up. Bishop takes, queen b3. There is king g6. But then we have knight h4 check, king h5, queen f3 check, king takes pawn, or king takes knight, queen g3 to g5. Okay, yeah, this is definitely winning. Okay, this is a bit more simple. And it says king g6, check, 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 checkmate, just like I said. Okay, good. 580. I think it's rook takes e6, pawn takes, knight takes, king moves, and then probably like a rook d3 to g3, and I think black is busted. Queen g4 check, the king starts to run a little bit, so I think it's rook d3. Looks like rook takes f6, pawn takes, knight takes, and then take the rook. If rook e1 check, we block with the rook, so I think this is just a free, at least one or two free pawns. Kind of curious, how many exercises? Oh yeah, this chapter's really big, that's right. Okay. We started off at what, 526? And we're up to 581. So we've done about 50 something. Bishop takes, and then queen b3 check to take the rook, I believe. Oh, played that way too quick, sorry. I thought the king took the bishop. Okay, I guess we're just taking the rook, right? And then queen to b3, I think. I guess there is knight c4, and the bishop is somewhat trapped, I will say. Hold on. Let's figure this out. I gotta move the queen, but I want to make sure that after the knight comes back to a4 or c4 that my bishop isn't trapped. Because if the bishop is trapped, then black is getting two pieces for a rook, which is a little less straightforward. If the knight goes to a4, we have rook to c1 and then bishop to c6, so that's good. If the knight goes to c4, we take it. Okay, I think we have to play queen b1 instead of b3. Because if we go to b3 and black plays knight c4, we take the knight, they take back with the pawn, and then my queen and bishop are both hit. If I go queen to b1 and the knight goes to c4, we take, if the pawn takes, we have bishop a4, and if the queen takes, we have rook c1 and bishop c6. I think it's queen b1, and then rook c1, and then bishop c6. Yeah, it says queen to b3, question mark, and white can't save the bishop because this is coming with a tempo. Is queen b1 the only winning move? That's a very nice puzzle, even without the whole bishop takes f7 in the first place. Yeah, queen b1 is the best move for sure in the position. Okay, I obviously bishop takes f7 at the start is nice, but I really like this position right here specifically because it's, you know, you have two different moves, queen b3 and queen b1, that both look very reasonable, but there is a big difference between the two. Queen b3 is not winning because it's much more equal, whereas queen b1 is winning because you can save the bishop. Okay, I like that one a lot. Okay, next puzzle. I guess the question is how to save these pieces. I mean, I would assume it's queen b6, and then you hit the knight and set up discovered checks. I don't really know what other move it would be. You could play knight takes h3 first. That's actually something I should note. Because if pawn takes, then you check and take the knight. That might be better. I think you do it this way. Oh. Okay, if the king moves, then I think you go queen c7 or something like that. I guess he plays e5. Is that the idea? That's a little bit tricky. Queen c7, e5. Okay. So maybe it's queen d7, e5, pawn takes. You hit the bishop. I don't know. It feels. Maybe it's not knight g5 because the bishop takes, so that's not it. Maybe bishop e5, knight takes, pawn takes, and I'm hitting the bishop on d2. Hitting the bishop on d2 is an important point, because if they take the knight, I have the bishop hanging. I like this one as well. Like right here, this is almost the same thing as the last position. You're under pressure. It's almost like a defensive tactic. You have to figure out how to avoid losing material. Usually in a tactic book, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I do like the fact that you start with knight takes h3, so it starts with the tactic and then finishes almost with like a defensive exercise. I think that's totally fine. Because you have to find knight takes h3 in the first place. I don't think queen to b6 at the start is as good. Yeah, queen to b6, there's this e5 move, which is very weird. But white is better. Okay. We have some kind of d6 move at some point. Knight takes f7 is also available. Hold on. What is the path forward here? It's not jumping out at me. You could do knight h7, which looks very, very weird. The idea is that if the king takes, you play bishop takes g6 and then rook takes c7. Looks weird, but is an option. But maybe black just plays king g7 or something, and the knight's kind of stranded. It's kind of a funny position. Knight takes f7 would be nice if the king had to take, because then we have bishop takes g6, but the rook can take, which is kind of a bummer. Bishop takes g6 right away. There's queen takes c1. And then I think black is doing fine there. Bishop h7 check, king g7. The knight on g5 is hanging, which is a problem. Knight takes f7, rook takes f7. Bishop takes g6, queen takes c1. Or the queen can also just move. It doesn't need to take c1. Not jumping out at me on this one, I will say. Not jumping out. I mean, we can play a simple move like knight to e4, but then black plays like knight to d6, I guess. And then I think black is doing fine there. Yeah, I think black is doing okay at that point. Not jumping out at me. Not jumping out. So there is knight takes f7, rook takes f7, bishop takes g6, but maybe they just play queen to d6, and I think black is having two pieces for the rook, which is probably good for them. What is it here? What is it? It feels like some d6 moves should be useful, but the knight on b7 does a good job of covering that. Okay, I don't think knight e4 is the answer, but I feel like I'm not seeing a knockout blow. So I would play. I mean, this is maybe kind of a. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's not the answer, but I feel like in a game I would play knight e4 and the game would go on. And I don't think I'm terribly unhappy about black's position, but I can understand that's not the best move. It probably is some kind of knight takes f7 move, but I'm really not seeing the follow-up after rook takes f7. I don't think it's d6 because the queen or the knight just takes on d6. I don't think that really does a ton for us. We don't really have a great way to move the bishop off of c2 because black can take on c1. So bishop takes g6 at the start. I thought black could play queen takes c1. And then I can throw in bishop h7 check, and then the king moves, and I can take everything on c1, but I lose the knight on g5 is the issue, I think. Bishop takes g6, queen takes c1. Is there anywhere else I can move? Not with check, not really. Okay, I'm going to go with knight takes f7, and I guess bishop takes g6. And somehow this is the best move. Queen d6, I thought. Take, 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 and then queen to c2. Queen to c2 is... I also thought queen takes c1. Queen takes c1, bishop takes, king takes, queen h5 check. It says wins the queen, and I thought... I understood that this wins the queen, but I thought the king would move away, and then black is going to have a rook and two minor pieces. So I don't really understand the sentence wins the queen. Is my evaluation just off here? So, like, let's say this, right? Black has a rook and two minor pieces, but white is winning. That's a... Okay, so I thought that something like this could happen, but I didn't think this was great for white. I guess you can, you know... I guess you're going to win the pawn on e5 or the pawn on h6. I guess you're just going to have a bunch of pawns for the piece. Yeah, we're losing two pieces for the rook, but apparently this is winning for white. I would not have necessarily thought that. I didn't think it was bad for white, but I didn't think it was plus 4.5 or whatever at the same time. But I guess white's just going to have so many extra pawns, and the pieces are all scattered, which is not a great thing. Like, if it was white's move, this fork is a big deal, of course. Okay. I don't think I miscalculated. I think I misevaluated, because I did see this idea, but I didn't actually think it was better for black, or better for white. I thought black was ahead material with the two pieces. Okay, fair enough. I think this is bishop d7, and the rook is trapped, and if the queen takes, there's knight f6. Okay, well, we take the rook. E7, if rook here, we check and win the queen. If the rook blocks, then we play... What do we play? Queen h6, there's rook takes. So maybe not that. It's going to involve queen h6, but kind of the question is when. The question is when. When. If queen h6 right away, I think black plays queen b7 or c7. And then if we push the pawn, they take, and that's nothing for us. So maybe it's push, block, knight d5, and then we're attacking the pawn and the queen. I think that's winning. Why are all these from Tal games? So in the Woodpecker method book, which is what we're working through, all of the tactics are from World Champion games. And we just happen to be in the series that is focusing on Tal. So after Tal will be, I think Botvinnik is after Tal. But you're going to get a bunch of puzzles from one world champion in a row. It just happens to be that we're kind of in the Tal sequence, you could call it. But we've looked at puzzles from Steinitz all the way through Carlsen in the other chapters. It just happens to be a coincidence here. So I think we do this, and then rook takes h7. And then, yeah, here we are. I think we check and play h4. I think we need to free up some space on the back rank. And then I think we can promote finally. Black gets a couple more checks, but then they run out of checks. Yeah, so it's going to be another Tal one. It's going to be probably a few more Tal ones until we get into, I think, Botvinnik. Botvinnik is the next world champion, I think. I think it's bishop takes. And then almost no matter what recaptures, then we have knight h6, knight f7, I think. The pawn could take, though, which makes life a little trickier. But if the pawn takes, then we take the pawn on d5. So I think we do this, and then check, and then we can check. And if the queen takes, we get the rook on c8. Okay. Tal was one of the best tactical players. Yeah, no question about that. We have knight e5 or rook takes f3. I kind of feel like rook takes f3 is better to do at the start, because if we go knight e5 at the start, maybe some kind of rook c7 move, maybe? Even then, bishop d6 looks good. I think it's rook takes f3 at the start, and then rook to d3. I'm a little curious as to why not knight e5. It didn't say anything in the text. It says knight e5 is better for black too. Bishop d1. Bishop d1 is a good counter-attacking move, and white does not lose any material. Okay. So, yeah, bishop d1 is, I think, the key there. Okay, I've seen this one before. It's bishop takes, knight check, queen check, knight f7, queen d6, or something like that. If the knight blocks, you check on f7 with the queen, and then knight e6 mate. And if the king moves, then it's knight f7 and queen d6 mate. Okay. Feels like knight takes f7, then bishop takes e6. And then you take on c8. You get two pawns. The king is exposed. That's usually good enough compensation to like highly consider or lean towards this sacrifice or this exchange of material. Oh, there's a bishop on e8. Oh my gosh. There's a bishop on e8. Okay, that was bad. There's a bishop on e8. For some reason, I just completely missed the bishop there. Okay, going a little too quick. The other option is knight to g4 to get rid of the knight that's protecting h7. So knight g4, knight takes, queen check, king f8. Check on h8, king moves. Then queen takes g7, and then the knight is hit as well as the e6 pawn. And I think black is in big trouble there. Okay, it must be this. And yeah, white has threats against e6 and g4. Okay, I captured on f7, completely overlooking there's a bishop there. That's pretty silly, but okay. What are we doing here? Rook d7 check, bishop takes, king f8, queen d6, king e8. I kind of fail to see the follow-up there. There is rook b3 and trying to play queen b4, but I think black plays queen to c5 and kind of defends everything. Or queen c7. Okay, what is it here? I need to turn on the heater. It's cold in here. Hopefully that's not too loud in the background. Rook b3, queen c7. If I check there's c5, then I don't think that's great. So I don't think it's rook b3. Rook d7 I'm not fully convinced by, because the king goes to f8 after the capture, and I don't really see the the mating or attacking follow-up all that much. Maybe it's e5. Actually, e5 is looking good. e5, pawn takes, queen g5 check, and then black is for sure getting crushed. Okay, so white is just opening up the king further, and this makes a lot of sense. Pawn breaks, open up the king when it's already weakened. I mean, I think we can take on a4 at the very least, maybe. Right? Take. I don't see why taking a4 would be bad. If they play rook to a8, we have bishop takes. Sorry, we have bishop takes b5, and then we either keep our extra pawn, or we get 2 pieces for the rook. So I think it's this, trade, and then we are going to be up a pawn. Okay. It looks like white just played the move f5, which is kind of dangerous. I feel like take, eliminate this bishop, take, kick the rook, and then somehow pick up the g5 pawn. I mean, strategically speaking, black is going to be ahead like a billion pawns. Right now, black's already ahead 2 pawns. We might be ahead 3 pawns if we get the e5 pawn. And we slow down or almost eliminate white's attack, I think. I think it's e takes. No, not e takes. Interesting. Maybe rook takes c4 first? Or knight takes e5 first. Is it knight takes e5 first? Maybe it's rook takes c4 first. Okay, and then e takes f5, right? And then, yeah, black wins the pawns on e5 and d. So if you take on f5 first, you give white the option to take on f7 and win the rook. It says it's also strong, but losing the f-pawn is unnecessary. Okay, fair enough. So I had the right idea here, just the wrong move order. You want to take the bishop and then take the pawn rather than the other way around. I guess by taking the pawn, you give white more options, which is kind of the annoying part. Okay, next. My queen is hit. What do we do? So, I mean, I can do bishop takes, knight takes, take with check, and stay up the exchange. But bishop takes, what's the answer there? Oh, then we have rook takes, check, and take there. Okay, so it is bishop takes, rook takes, check, take. Okay, I think that's a nice one. Because, yeah, it's, you know, the queen is hit. It looks like we have to move the queen, but we can actually make our own kind of bigger threats and beat black to the punch. Okay, nice. Oh, this one's cool. I think it's b6. And then the knight is trapped. Queen takes, and then queen c3, and the knight is still trapped. Yeah, it says the knight is lost after queen to c3. Okay. That's an interesting pattern. Rook c5, there's knight d2 check, king moves, bishop b4, I guess. And then there's also knight takes b3. So there's also c7 right now. I mean, why is it not c7? Am I missing something with c7? c7, rook blocks, rook to b8. We can also just take on c4, I will say. We can take on c4, and I don't know why that would be bad. We're up a pawn. It is opposite color bishop, so it's not the easiest win in the world, but we are up a pawn nonetheless. Maybe we push the pawn to c7 first? I mean, maybe that's just stronger. But then rook to c8 and knight back to d6 or something. So no, I don't feel like it's I don't think it's pawn to c7. What to do? I can't imagine the answer is as simple as just taking back on c4, even though I don't really see anything wrong with it. I have to imagine something is better here. But what is better? Rook. You can throw in rook f5 check, bishop blocks, and then take on c4. But I don't really see what that does special. c7, rook c8. Again, rook to b8. There's knight b6 or d6. Oh, wait, hold on. Then there's bishop e6. That's it. Okay, it is c7. And then rook to c8. And, oh, hold on. No, if the rook goes, oh, there's a mate threat. Hold on. Now we check on f5. Now we check on f5. If the bishop blocks, we take on c4, no mate threat. And if the king moves, then we can take on c4 with check or play, or the king will block the rook. Okay, so this is an important move. No, it's not. Wow. Okay, fair enough. Why would it? Oh, you can play rook to b8. You can still play rook to b8 because the rook is pinned. And then I think the important point here is bishop a4. And then bishop d7. Okay, that's a tricky one. Okay, taking on c4 it says plus over minus, so white's better, but c7 is winning. If rook c8, block, and then bishop e6 is good. Here you still pin the rook, and then you attack it a couple of times, and you pretty much have to see this sequence of events to win the game. Okay, that's a nice one. Feels like we can play bishop takes h7 check, check on c2 to get away from the pin, and then take the knight or the bishop. We can also go queen d3 to start with, but then I think black just plays g6. So I think we do this. Now, which piece do we take? I would venture to guess the bishop, quite honestly. If we take the knight, they can play pawn f6 and then take c6, and then... Yeah, it is better to take the bishop. It says we get a positional advantage, but it's a great one. Taking the knight, I think black plays pawn to f6, and then they take the pawn. And then black is actually in pretty good shape with their pair of bishops. Okay. Rook takes g7 is my first instinct. If the rook takes back, we have mate on e8, and if the king takes, then what? Then we have rook to c7 pinning the queen, or pinning the rook, and then I think we're keeping an extra piece. So I think it's this. Okay, fair enough. I think I have to take the bishop. And it's a messy position. We don't lose our queen, but white is... We're not losing our queen. That's kind of the main point here. Okay. White should probably go queen g3 to trade the queens and keep the king safe. Another Mikhail Tal. I think it's knight takes g4, pawn takes queen f2 check. And then queen f3 and queen takes g4. Okay. Oh, this is a famous one. So it's queen takes e5, pawn takes queen, pawn takes f7 check. King f8, there's bishop h6 mate. King to d8, there's bishop to f5 discovered check, and black is losing, black is going to have to give the queen back pretty much. And if king here, sorry, I should have looked at, so it's bishop f5, then back to e4. And black has to give up the rook, and then white has, technically it's only two bishops for a queen, but there's just so many threats in the position, there's no way that black can, black can survive here. Apparently bishop takes, and then taking the rook was also winning as well. Yeah, we would have a rook and 2 bishops for the queen. And the F pawn is super scary. Okay, very nice. Feels like some kind of queen e8 back rank idea. But black doesn't have to take us right away on f pawn e8. But then we can play rook to d8 afterwards and almost kind of force it. So I think it's this, and then this. And then we're threatening to like take f7 or rook takes c8, and lots of threats for black to worry about. Okay. I think I have seen this kind of pattern before. Bishop h3. If they take our bishop, we take on f3 with check and win the queen. If they take our knight on d4, we take the bishop on g2 first. And then we take on d4, attacking the bishop on e3. If white had tried to castle kingside, then we would take on f3 and then take the rook on f1. Maybe king f1 is... No, king f1 we still take on f3 and hit the queen. Okay. Alright. Knight e6 almost looks winning. Hold on, let me see. Rook takes f7, there's queen takes. That doesn't look good. Knight e6, if pawn takes, we have rook takes f7, knight takes f7, queen takes f8, then f7, and then e6. And I think that should be winning for white. I think it's this, 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 this. And then we take the e6 pawn, and we just have way too many pawns. And our f pawn is advanced as well. Alright. Rook takes c3, king takes c3. Rook c8 check, king moves, take on b3. We are down a piece though, so we need to be maybe a little more precise. There's also bishop to b4, but then white has rook to c4. Okay, let's think this through. What are we doing? What are we doing? It's either bishop to b4 or rook takes c3 on this one. I don't think there's any other moves to consider. Bishop b4, there's rook c4, which is the move that's really annoying me. So rook takes c3, king takes c3. Then bishop to b4. King takes b4, queen a5, king c4, queen a6 wins the queen. Okay, that looks pretty good. If king d3, we take b3 and that's mate. If king c2, we check with the rook and then take b3. Okay, so I think we have to take the rook, and I think this bishop to b4 move is very important. And then this wins us the queen. Okay, yeah, bishop to b4. It says if rook to c8 check, king d2, and the king escapes. So pretty much I was trying to get the same sequence with bishop to b4, rook takes, king moves, queen takes b3. But he had rook to c4. So we need to pretty much change... It's pretty much just a changing of the moves. We want to play bishop b4, but we play it on move number 2 instead of move number 1. And that gets the job done. Okay. I think for today we'll go to 625, which will mean we have done another 100 puzzles. I do have a student to teach in about an hour, so we'll see if we can get through 20 puzzles in the next hour. Okay. I think it's rook takes f6, bishop takes queen h5, and then there's really no way to stop the mate. We don't want to go queen h5 right away because they can push the f pawn. So you eliminate the pawn. No. Maybe there's rook g... No, not rook g8. I'm not sure why that doesn't work. It looks good. Okay, maybe there's something better. Queen h5, there's f5. That's annoying. Maybe it's bishop takes h7 and then just do a rook lift. That also looks quite good. I don't know if it matters which rook we use. Okay, I don't think it matters. I am kind of curious if rook takes f6 is winning. It does say it's winning, but it's not as convincing. Rook goes to g8, and then rook goes to g7. Okay, that's fair enough. It's good, but bishop takes h7 is better. Bishop takes g7 or knight takes g7 followed by queen g4 is kind of my idea. I think it's knight takes g7 because we need the other knight to come to f5 at some point. Now queen g4. No. Why not? Queen g4, bishop f6, knight f5. Oh, wait, queen g3. Ah, important point, important point. Queen g4 looks good, but queen g3 is actually very important because after bishop... Oh, well, if bishop f6, knight f5, and there's no counterplay, if the queen is on g4, there's a pin. This pin, if bishop takes g7, there's bishop takes f5. If you try to do the same thing here, bishop e6, I can just take on g7 with the knight, for example. Okay, that's a good important point. I really like positions where there's two moves that look the same, but there is some kind of difference between the two moves. I think a lot of the puzzles today have kind of had that idea. There's two different moves that have like the same pattern or the same idea, but only one of them works, and so you have to figure out between the two which is the better. I really like those kind of positions because they really require precision. And I'm very much a precision guy when I'm calculating. I will also say that's a reason why I don't like the puzzles where there's a bunch of answers. I really like puzzles where there's just one clean-cut sequence you have to figure out. And here I messed that up. Queen g4 is not correct. I will fully admit to that. Okay. Feels like some kind of bishop takes g6 or rook takes f7 move. I don't think it's bishop takes g6, because after pawn takes, queen takes, we're not really threatening anything. So it probably is rook takes f7, rook takes, bishop takes g6, and then I think it's difficult for black to deal with queen h7, queen h8. I almost feel like I would do this intuitively here. Ooh, okay, fair enough. I didn't think about knight f5. But I can take on f5 with the bishop. Rook takes, take e6 with check, rook blocks. There should be some e6 move at the right time. But it's not so clear-cut. I can also take the rook, of course. Bishop takes f7, king takes f7, give a check somewhere, take on h5, for example, and I have a lot of pawns. I have like 3 pawns for the piece, which is probably pretty good. I think that's best. Yeah, I think I just... Oh, I don't do that. Oh, queen h... Hold on. Rook f1? Maybe rook f1. Or queen h7 check, then rook f1. Yeah, I think you check here. If the knight blocks, you check on f1 and win the knight, and then if the king moves, then you take on h5, and you have a better version of things. Yeah, so that was the way to go on this one. Let's see here. Rook takes f7, rook takes f7, queen takes b8 check, rook blocks, queen back to... Queen can take on b5. Rook takes f7, queen takes f7, bishop d5, queen takes bishop, queen g7. I think this is the way to go. And then I take... Oh. Okay, I don't need to take the bishop, but as long as I guard the e3 square, I think we're doing fine. Maybe I just go bishop to d4 or something. Yeah. If the rook blocks... Oh, queen a7 is important. We don't want to take the bishop because queen takes e3. We have to go to a7 to guard the e3 pawn. Okay. Fair enough. And yeah, if the queen had taken on f7, we had the move bishop to d5, which is nice. Get rid of all that. I don't know what that is. Okay. Next. Okay, I mean, the queen is trapped, which is not a great sign. Knight h4, if they take the queen, we take with check, and then we win the queen. That's a good start. They don't have to take our queen, though. They can take our knight instead. But then we can move the queen away, and then I think white's just in bad shape. So I think we're losing the queen, or we're losing a piece, but I think we're getting a good position. Yeah, so knight h4, queen h3, and then white's in bad shape. They tried this in the game. To their credit, this looks kind of dangerous. Black found the right defense, and apparently they drew the game later. Okay. We got the answer correct, though, there. Bishop d4, he takes on f5. Bishop takes f7, check first. I don't see the follow-up. So maybe it's knight takes h6, then queen g6, then take f7. Probably I would assume with the bishop. If I take with the queen, he can eliminate the bishop, so I think I take this way. And it says there's no defense against the move bishop takes h6. Yeah, white has at least 2 pawns for the piece already. Or, sorry, 3 pawns for the piece. And maybe a 4th pawn and a big attack, and white's in good shape here. Okay. Knight takes h6, king takes h6, queen h4 check, then queen g4 and take the rook, I think. Okay, good. White's threatening to take on g7. Rook takes f2, king takes f2. Bishop c5 is almost winning, but white can take on c5 with the rook, which is annoying. White's also threatening rook c4, or not right now, I guess, right? Okay, first things first, black's up a piece. Yeah, black is just up a piece, so... So I don't really know if it's necessary to find anything special here. I mean, maybe the rook just comes back to f7. It feels kind of lame, but there must be some knockout blow, I would assume, but I'm not really sure if I would. I don't know. Maybe it's kind of lazy, but oh, hold on. It's rook takes g3, isn't it? I was looking at rook takes f2, but it's rook takes g3. Rook takes g3. Okay, now that I'm looking at it, this is easy. King g1, knight f3 check, you take the rook. King h1, you can play like king h3 or something, and white's getting mated. Okay, good. Rook g5 check, pawn takes, king h8, queen h6 mate. Or then queen h7 mate. I think we do it this way. Okay, if he doesn't take, I think we can just check on g6 and win the queen. But if he had taken, this would eventually be checkmate. Okay, about 10 more puzzles will do. Queen takes d5 is first instinct. Bishop to e5 is another move worth considering. If my bishop was gone, I would have rook h8, queen h6, queen h7, queen h8. So actually that looks good. We get the mate. Okay. I think we take the pawn, trade a bunch, and then d5, attacking the rook and the bishop at the same time, because our bishop on f8 eyes that bishop. I think Does it matter which piece you take with? Taking with the knight looks simpler. You could maybe go d5 first, but I feel... Oh. Interesting. If you trade queens and then play d5, white takes f8. And then white has 2 pieces for the rook. Here you do want to play d5. Okay, that was sloppy for me, for sure. Because, yeah, if you trade the queens and then play d5, they take f8, they save the piece, and then white has 2 pieces. Okay. Sloppy, sloppy. d5 versus queen takes e4, then d5. Have to figure out the right order. Queen d8, king g7. I think it's knight g6 check first. Knight g6, pawn takes, then queen d8, and then rook takes g6. This is the game. Okay. We can take on f6, then play d5. I'm pretty positive that's the idea. But I rush things. If we take on f6 and play d5, there is knight to e5. Maybe that's the problem. Hold on. So then if we're not taking on f6, what's the other move? There's, I guess, rook takes f6? I don't know, rook takes f6. Black takes with the pawn, queen g6, queen h6. It looks dangerous. If they take back with the rook, then we take the rook, they take back, d5, knight e5 is still very annoying. Oh, I can take on h6 as well. Actually, that looks better now that I'm looking at it. I can take here. And then do I go queen g6 first, or do I take on d5 first? I guess I go queen g6. It says then find another move. Okay, I would take on d5 then, and then play queen g6. Or queen b3, but probably g6. Yeah, and white's up a pawn with a very good position. b4 traps the queen almost. b4, the queen goes to a4 though. There's also knight takes e6, rook takes d2, bishop takes d2. I don't think the queen trap works. I think this is the way to go, and this puts us ahead of pawn. Is b4 a bad move at the start? I guess I'm kind of curious. Knight takes e6 is best, but b4... Oh, queen takes e5. I was just completely missing this is hanging. Okay, yeah, queen takes e5. That's an error on my part. But yeah, knight takes e6 is the way to go. Rook takes, king takes, check. Looks pretty dangerous, I will say. It looks pretty good. Oh, that was... I thought he was taking with the king. That was way too fast. If he takes with the king... Oh, then queen d3 check. Ah, that's better. Okay. I have the right instinct on this one, but the wrong idea. I was planning on taking on e4, but queen d3 is better for sure. Bishop a5, queen takes, knight e6 is mate, I think is this one. No. Why not? I don't really know why not. c5? Maybe c5 is better? Maybe c5 is better. And then bishop a5? So what's wrong with playing bishop a5 at the start? Okay, bishop a5 is also completely winning, but c5 is better. Okay, fair enough. You used to kill this book on PDF? Yeah, it's been a pretty good book so far. It's got, I think the puzzles, generally speaking, are really good. I'm not a huge fan of the puzzles where there's multiple answers. But overall, I think it's a really good puzzle book. And I'm curious to see how the actual like cycle part of things goes once I start shortening the cycles. Like once I finish the book, I'm gonna do the same, do it all once again in half the time that it's taken me so far. I'm curious to see how the cycle side of things works out. But the book itself, in terms of like a good quality tactic book, seems very good so far, in my opinion. I think e5 is winning a piece. You got number 2 with positional play? Yeah, I have that as well. I was planning on doing that after this one. So doing like the Woodpecker method number 1 all the way until I solve all the puzzles in one day. And then moving on to book number 2. That's my plan. We'll see how that works out. Okay, I think I can just take on d5 a bunch of times and I'm just up a pawn, I believe. Yeah, we're just gonna be ahead of pawn. Feels like obviously our queen's hit, so I need to get rid of this knight, and then I need to get rid of this knight, and then the pawn takes, and then the rook comes over, and then I think if I just clear out the knights, I think it's game over. So you get rid of that, then you get rid of that, then you get rid of that, and yeah, this is a nice tactic. You pretty much just have to recognize that if both the knights disappear, the game is over. And so forcefully, you just give up everything until you get rid of the last knight, and white's completely winning. Feels like one of the knights should take on e5 and then take on c7. I don't know if it matters which knight. If you use this knight, they can check and then maybe take the rook, but we still take d7 and b8. So I don't think it matters which knight, but I should probably think here for a moment and see if it does. My impression is I would probably use the c6 knight and leave the f3 knight to kind of keep the king a little bit safe. Yeah, so notice the knight on f3 guarding g1 is probably useful here, but now I have to finish off black with these discovered checks. Knight takes d7, king h6 is, I think, bad news. So I think we want to go knight g4 to cover the h6 square. King f7, knight g5 check, king e7, but then where's the next check there? That's a little bit annoying. I'm pretty sure it's knight g4, king f7, but then what next? Maybe rook f8, king takes queen h8 or something like that. I'm pretty positive this is the move. And then what next is the question? This knight on h5 is actually defending some very important squares. I have to mate, because if I don't mate, I'm getting mated. So, so how do we mate? Rook f8, king takes f8, queen h8, king e7. I think black starts to run away at that point, which is very, very sad. Wow. Feels like a win, but where's the win? Feels like a win, but where's the win? Knight g5 check, king e7, no more checks. No more good checks. Rook f8, can't go to e7. Actually, could still go to e7. Yeah, hold on. What's the move? Knight h6 check, king e7, and then where's the... Oh, then we have knight g8 check. King f7. Oh, there we go. I think we need the knight... that's the key. Knight h6, king e7, knight g8 check, king f7, knight g5. The knight... We need something to cover the e7 square. I think that's the trick. Okay, apparently he could have given up... Apparently he could have also given up his queen. Check, check, checkmate. Yeah, so you need the knight around to g8. That's kind of a weird idea, but you need something covering e7 is the key, because nothing else can really cover e7. That's the trick. Yeah, that's a tricky one, but we got the right idea. Okay, great. Knight takes f7, king takes f7, rook takes e6. I think this is a pretty standard one. If queen takes e6, we throw in knight g5. Yeah, queen takes e6, there's knight g5. Anywhere else the queen moves, there should be many different moves that are good, like rook f6. You know, this ends up giving checkmate soon. Okay, I think we have one more puzzle to hit 100 for the day. So let's do that. I think it's knight takes d5. I don't think it matters which knight. Take with one of the knights on d5, take with the other, take on f6, then take on d7, and we're up 2 pawns. So I don't think it mattered which knight. We are ahead 2 pawns. Knight takes... This knight also leads to the same thing. Apparently white is winning, but blundered on the next move, which is very unfortunate. I'm not sure how white could have blundered here. Oh... I can anticipate the blunder. I bet the game... I don't know this game, but I'm going to guess what happened in the game, and then we're going to look it up. I'm going to guess that black played rook e2, and I'm going to guess that white played queen d4, and then rook e1 check happened. Let's check if that's the case. That's pretty funny. I want to see if this is if this was what happened in the game. Yep, that is exactly it. That is pretty funny. Here's the actual game. Oops, sorry, too far. But yeah, you can see knight takes here, take. Queen d4 was the blunder on the very next move, and then white resigns in this position because he's going to lose the rook on a1. That's pretty funny. Good guess. Yeah. I did hear recently, we're pretty much right at the end of the puzzles we were going to do for the day, so I'll just talk for a quick moment. I did hear recently a very interesting training method for it was actually for golf. Not for chess, but I heard a very interesting training method for golf, and maybe it's a training method for other things as well. I think it's called differential training. Let's Google it here. Differential training. I don't know how the screen share is going to work, but or differential training or learning or something like that. I wonder if we can I just want a definition pretty much. Maybe I should look for learning. Let's try learning instead. Essentially, it's a way of learning. Nope, this is not what I was looking for. Okay, the descriptions it's giving here are not really all that great. But, okay, so the way I heard it described in this golf podcast, and I'm not really much of a golf player, but I do like podcasts that are about learning, which is what it is. Differential training, the way they explained it was, instead of trying to practice the correct thing when you're playing golf, you try to practice the wrong thing sometimes. Like, you try to hit the ball, I guess in golf, with like the wrong part of the club. You try to do like the wrong thing sometimes on purpose. Maybe not during an actual competition, but during training. You try to do the wrong thing on purpose so that you can learn what the right thing feels like. Like, if you know what's the wrong feeling, then it makes it so that you're more likely to know what the right feeling is. That's kind of how I understood it. I was trying to think about a chess version of that. And the chess version in my mind is like looking for the worst move in the position. Like looking for the blunder, like how could I blunder the game away here? Or how could I lose the game in this position? And interestingly enough, that's kind of what we were just guessing here. Like, I was trying to figure out what happened next and how white could have blundered the game. And I figured it out. So that's pretty cool. I would guess that can sometimes be useful because obviously when you're training, you're always trying to find the best move in puzzles. But if I presented a position to somebody and said, like, find a way to blunder your, I don't know, bishop or something, then you would know that, oh, this is a bad move. But maybe I would want you to figure out how to blunder bishop in, like, a way that's not so straightforward. Like, queen to d4 here, rook e2 and queen d4. Queen d4 looks like a very reasonable move on first glance, but it does blunder. So it would almost be like, can you find a reasonable looking move that is actually a blunder? That's maybe an interesting way of looking at things. I don't think you would want to do that purposely during a game, but I do think for trading purposes that could be interesting. I have very, very little anecdotal evidence other than like this one position, and from just hearing the podcast and their golf version of it. But I thought that was an interesting approach. I had never really thought about that before. Anyways, though, I think we have hit 100 puzzles for the day. Let me go back and double check that that's the case. We started off on 526. If I remember correctly. Yeah, so 526 was the end of the previous chapter, and it says we've done 99 on this one. Maybe I needed to do 100. Sorry, maybe I needed to do one more. Oh, okay, I'm gonna do one more. I just want a round number. One more puzzle, and then we'll be at the 100 for the day. Queen e5 check, and then rook to d8, and we win the queen on c3. I think that's pretty straightforward. Okay, there's our 100. Kind of end off on a pretty easy one. But yeah, so we did 100 puzzles today. I had planned on doing a longer stream today, but I kind of forgot that I had a lesson at 1 o'clock. So I have to teach that lesson with a student, which I'm happy to do. But anyways, so we will... I don't necessarily plan on streaming during the weekend. I might stream tomorrow. I'm not going to make a promise on that, but at least for the moment, I wouldn't necessarily bet on it. But if I show up on if I show up on YouTube tomorrow with a live stream, then then that's what's happening. At the very least, though, the plan is to come back on Monday and start once again at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and pick back up on puzzle number 627, I guess. So we are over halfway through the course. There's 1,128 puzzles total. It looks like we have about 502 left. So that's pretty good. So at the very least, I'll be back on Monday for the next stream. I might show up tomorrow, but we'll see. Either way, though, thanks a lot for the people who have participated, hung out today, and watched. I appreciate all of you guys, and hope you guys have a good rest of the day. And I will see you Monday at the very least. Maybe tomorrow, but we'll see. All right, have a good one, guys. Have a good day. See you later. Bye-bye.